And now, Roma Wines bring back to our Hollywood soundstage Agnes Moorehead as Mrs. Sally Skinner and William Johnstone as Jonathan Brown in The 13th Sound, a tale well calculated to keep you in suspense.
I must have been taken home from the inquest. For the next consciousness I had, I was lying on the guest bed. In the corner sat Mr. Jonathan Brown. He must have seen my eyes open.
Feeling better?
Yes, thank you. I'm terribly sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Quite a strain, you know.
Yes, it was quite a strain.
The coroner asked whether it'd be all right to go on without you. Everybody seemed agreed, you know, so we finished up while the doc looked you over.
What happened?
Oh, he said you'd be all right. Shock.
I meant about my husband.
And his death at the hand of persons unknown, you know.
Is there anything further I must do?
Not a thing, Miss Skinner.
You've been very kind.
Well, it's a terrible thing happened to you. Well, I'll be going now if there's nothing more you need from me.
No, nothing, thank you.
Well, goodbye then, and don't you worry. We'll find who did it, you know.
After he had left, I had the time to be angry at myself for my behavior at the inquest. What must the people have thought? To faint only from the noise of a piece of chalk on a blackboard? I wondered if Mr. Brown had suspected anything, because as I remembered back to earlier afternoon, he had been watching me as he drew those silly little diagrams on the board. He hadn't been looking anywhere else, not at the coroner or at any of the reporters, not even at what he was doing. He'd been looking at me. Well, of course he was looking at me. He was showing his sympathy. I slowly allowed myself to return to my former position in the community. I was able now to do the things I'd always wanted to do, but had been restrained from doing by a certain attitude of my husband's. He had never liked entertaining. He didn't believe that we should belong to the country club and take a civic pride in the fact that our home was the largest and most beautiful in the community. In fact, it was his desire to sell our lovely home that caused me to finally take that complete and drastic step. The first evening that I accepted an outside invitation was for one of the Wednesday night evenings of bridge at our club. At my table were the president of the bank and his wife. As I sat down, I noticed that a window pane on my left was shattered.
Good evening, Miss Gray. Miss Gray.
Good evening, Mr. Brown.
Miss Skinner.
Good evening, Mr. Brown.
Well, I'm afraid I'm the culprit here. Playing ball with the kids this afternoon, and I threw one right through your lovely window.
Oh, really?
But I got old Sam here. I brought him along with new painted glass, and he'll fix us up shipshape in no time at all. Go ahead, Sam, right over there.
Yes, Mr. Brown, sure. Don't mind me, folks. I'll be through here in just a jiffy. Don't worry about it.
Oh, incidentally, Miss Skinner, I always meant to ask you whether or not you minded noises, especially. Sharp noises, like, say, chalk on a blackboard.
I don't understand. Chalk on a blackboard?
At the inquest, I always wondered about it. You fainted just when the chalk was scratching across the blackboard.
I don't remember hearing it. I'm afraid I fainted before you drew any diagrams.
Uh-huh.
I assume that's what you were planning to do, draw a diagram?
That's what I was planning to do, yes, ma'am.
Yes. Does he have to do that?
There's something wrong, Miss Skinner?
Does he have to do that?
Miss...
I can't.
Mrs. Skinner.
Again it had happened. And again, when the noise was made, it sounded like my husband's fingernails scraping down the rough side of the Johnson house. And again, as I slipped into darkness, I could see that Mr. Brown was watching me. I stayed at home for the next few days. I canceled all appointments. The heat really was unbearable. In October, I resumed my activities. I began to see people again. I grew especially interested in chamber music. Through my activity, I arranged a musical evening to be given by a group of which I was the second vice president. They planned the formation of a Philharmonic Society, and eventually I went to the musical alone, and I was studying my program when...
Is this seat taken?
Oh, good evening, Mr. Brown.
Mrs. Skinner, good evening. Didn't recognize you, ma'am.
Well, I was to be joined
Well,
later.
I'll just sit here a moment then. You know, I terribly sorry about the other night.
Oh, there's really nothing at all for you to be sorry about.
Now, it's very kind of you to say that, you know, but I do feel guilty as all sin, being the cause of you getting sick
Well,
like
really,
that,
Mr. Brown, I wasn't sick at all. Mr. Gregg told me I had probably been affected by the heat.
Oh.
It was very close in the club that night, if you'll remember.
Oh, yes, ma'am, it was hard. Well, just so I don't feel it was my fault.
Oh,
you know?
no, I don't want you to feel it was your fault.
Yes, well, that's very kind of you, you know. Oh, if you don't mind, I'll stay here until whoever holds this seat gets here.
Oh, that's quite all right.
We crave your indulgence and a certain open-mindedness for giving a fair chance to the first piece with which we're going to open our program this evening. The title of this piece is The 13th Sound, and the composer is Julian Carrillo. And this piece, because of the unorthodox nature of it, created a veritable furor in New York City some weeks ago on the occasion of its premiere. It's what you'd call, I guess, modern music. And the really unusual thing about it is that the instruments, instead of playing as they usually do in Mozart, Haydn, and such classical veins, play in quarter tones. Now, a quarter tone is somewhere in between the other tones, such as the we are accustomed to hearing. So, on this following piece, the instruments are not playing, as you would think, out of tune. This is the way it is supposed to sound. Thank you. So now the various members of the quartet will tune their various instruments into these quarter tones. This is a short piece, but I know you're going to like it. Tune up, gentlemen.
This should be very interesting. I think, Miss Skinner, the 13th Sound. Have you heard it?
Huh? No, I haven't.
All right. Well, too hot again, Mrs. Skinner? It does get stuffy here.
I
you
know.
know.
All right, it's hot in here.
You look terribly peaked. Sure you're all right?
I'm quite... Excuse me, will you let me out, please? Excuse me, please let me out. I left Mr. Brown sitting there. My man drove me home. I've never liked modern music. I locked all the doors. I found a hammer and a piece of board. And I beat and beat and beat and beat on the board with the hammer as hard as I could. And finally the heavy, steady, safe pounding that I made drove the other sharp, shrill, awful noise from my mind. Then I turned out all the lights, opened the windows, and went to sleep. I didn't sleep well, but I didn't stay awake either. I hadn't set the alarm next to my bed, and when I first awoke the next morning, for a minute I couldn't remember what had happened. I felt drugged. I got out of bed, put on a lovely chartreuse brocade housecoat, and started downstairs. The sun was shining outside. It was a beautiful day. Not the sort of day when you could be disturbed by unrelated noises. I felt grand when I got downstairs. And I heard... What? I didn't know. I didn't care. I knew only that I had to stop it before it happened to me again. Stop it! Stop it! Please stop it!
Pardon me, miss.
Get out of here! Who told you to do your work here? Did someone tell you to make that noise near my house?
Why, no, ma'am. The lawnmower, the dang thing wasn't cut, and I had to
Get
stop.
out! Go on, get off this property at once.
What?
Go and don't ever come back. Do you hear? Don't ever come back. Don't ever come back.
Morning, Miss Skinner. Lovely day.